Okay, so good afternoon. This is the third and final part of, well, kind of the fourth and final part of my how to plead not guilty to a moving violation, specifically going through a stop sign, um, getting the court date, going at the magistrate level. I was found guilty. I then went to the county courthouse, to the city clerk's office, and filled out paperwork, paid a nominal fee to appeal it, got a date. Now we're at the date of my appeal in the county courthouse in front of a judge, not a magistrate anymore. They call it like a nuovo trial, where basically the state is saying everything is wiped clean. There's nothing from the magistrate's hearing that is now going to be admitted in front of this judge. So you're basically starting from scratch. How true that is, I mean, it did seem to hold to it. When I was in front of that judge, there was some new accusations that the prosecutor wanted to levy against me. No charges, but accusations, which was interesting. But I do have to say, the county that I live in, they don't see stuff like this a lot. Most people do just plead guilty, and I'm not talking about an urban environment where these are educated people who just are busy. This is more of a rural environment. They don't know really the legal process. A lot of them don't know their rights. This is no affront to them. I'm just stating the facts, because I could tell by the demeanor of this judge that this was kind of a new thing. Also in the courtroom, observing, how most people interacted with the judge was once again something out of the Twilight Zone. It was very, very interesting. And so it was 128 of this year. It was at the end of a freezing cold snap. I mean, people just were not out on the streets, and I decided to. I usually like to walk or ride my bike, whatever. It's very close, but there was no way. They were advising that you couldn't even be out on the street for you couldn't be outside for lengthy periods of time because you were susceptible to frostbite. So I drove my car. I found kind of a space that was pretty close to the courthouse. So the reason I'm saying all this is because it was interesting, that there were no people on the street, because guess who popped out of nowhere? You know, I arrived at approximately 9:15. I wanted to make sure I was super early, or at least 15 minutes early. And I'm telling you, it was like a ghost town. And this is a very busy part of the kind of downtown, and you could hear anything. And so I heard like some rustling behind me, and so I turn around, and who is it but Corporal Fry? To me, it was creepy. It was kind of weird. Like, of all, when you want to make it so that you don't walk up behind me, it just looked like he was waiting to see if I showed up. And so I turned to him, and I said, "Oh, were you waiting to see if I showed up, Corporal Fry?" Not accusational, just kind of teasingly or whatever. And he said, "No, I just got here, and it's a coincidence." But meanwhile, way too much of a coincidence. I said, "Well, life is full of coincidences." Um, he also did not know where to go, which, you have to go through security at this courthouse. I was either in front of him or right behind him, and um, so anyway, I found it very interesting. It was a little breadcrumb that said, "Dude does not come here on a regular basis to fight, to go against people who are fighting their tickets, because there's not many courthouses in the area, and you would know." Like, these guys know, like, they're familiar with courtrooms, they know what room to go to, they know the judges, blah blah blah. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't know where to go either, so I did follow him. And then I didn't want to say anything else to him after that. But that just creeped me out. I don't know if it was meant to be intimidating. Maybe it was innocent, but I didn't take it that way. I would want all the appearances that you are not. If I saw me and I was him, I'd be like, oh, I'm going the other direction, because I don't want to make it look like, I'm trying to intimidate her or stalking her or being creepy or whatever. So he, of course, immediately made a beeline to other state troopers to kind of be in his own element. And I was like, I'm going to sit close because I just want to listen and see if he says anything that might be helpful to me. I positioned myself, kind of like catty corner to him. So nothing interesting evolved. But then the ADA of the county, who was handling those cases for that day, she approached both of them because she wanted to status with them. And she started asking about the cases that they were there, to provide testimony. So something interesting happened there, but I'm not going to discuss that at this time. But so she comes over and says, who is he there for? And he kind of points to me. And she says, okay, are you such and such? And I said, yes. And she asked if I had an attorney. I said, no. And she said, so this is for going through a stop sign? Like incredulous. And I said, yeah, it's not a federal case, but yeah, it is for going through a stop sign. And she said, so what do you want to do? And I said, well, I read the statute, and I know what my rights are, and that I'm innocent, not guilty. And she goes, tell it to the judge. Which I didn't get. So why did you come over and ask me, was I going to all of a sudden plead guilty after I've gone through all this? No. Nope. I'm in it to win it. So then shortly, we were all, I think as a group, all the people who were there for this judge who was handling appeals, a conglomeration of things, but basically it seemed to be mostly appeals. So I took a seat, so my case was called second. The first one, I just can't even make heads or tails of what they were there for. It was so bizarre. But so I was second. He was immediately called to the stand. The judge said to me, you realize that this is for a $25 ticket. And I was like, oh my God, that is not a good sign. That he's like, are you dumb? Do you realize what you're involving yourself in, that this seems like a moot point? And I said, yeah, and if I lose, I can appeal it to the Superior Court. And he said, you realize this is for $25, and I have the ability to fine you $300. So, I mean, the kangaroo court. So the ADA and the troopers start out. Interestingly enough, we've now elevated going through a stop sign to now I almost caused an accident, which was never part of his testimony at the magistrate's office. Quote unquote, I almost caused an accident and he had to brake. Wah. Poor Trooper Fry. Corporal Fry, excuse me. So this was new testimony. He did waffle and contradict himself by saying I was close to him pulling out, but couldn't give exact feet. I mean, maybe because I'm a product of growing up in a different century, but and TV, but I mean, usually these law enforcement is very good at giving specific details, not generalities, because the judge doesn't want generalities. He does want specific measurements, quantities, whatever the case may be, because it all is evidential. And yeah, he couldn't give the exact feet. I asked him about his testimony at the magistrate, that he may not have seen me brake or come to a stop at that stop sign, and his agreement that he actually corroborated my statement when I said, "You might not have seen me, isn't that correct?" And he said, "Yeah, that's possible." So the ADA objected. The ADA was getting hot. She was pissed. It was funny. The judge allowed it when I asked that. I also asked about giving people warnings. I brought up that that ordinance or standard operating procedure that outlines how a trooper is supposed to execute a citation. You know, it said that it's about their judgment. That's what it really boils down to, is good sound judgment. You can't treat people differently, and also depending on their stature, and also that giving a warning is an option. It even details on how to do it and what criteria is involved. So I asked him about that, and I read that out loud. He had nothing to say. He did. I asked him, "Well, have you ever done that? What are the circumstances that you do issue a warning?" He actually said nothing. I did also, during the cross-examination, ask him about body-worn cameras. He said, I still don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if he had it activated, but his question kind of says that he did, because he said he never reviewed it to know the distance, and they were now destroyed, body cam videos, because they only keep them for a certain amount of time. And I asked Corporal Fry if he was in a hurry. The ADA objected to that. The judge really focused on, because I'm sure I read my statement again that I had at the magistrate's office, and I said that I was working, and so I was, exercising caution and making sure that I obeyed the laws, because, that's a big deal when you're under someone else's umbrella, that they want you to drive as a representative of their company. So he wanted to know if I had a certain time to be there, which I never quite understood what he was getting at. But I did affirm this question. I said, yeah, I was under a clock. And that was pretty much it. He wanted to take the testimony under advisement. And he said that he would research some statutes. He said, interestingly enough, I just recently had a DUI case where this was the circumstance of where they were driving. And so he wanted to kind of see how, I guess, he applied the law to that. But he did not have a ruling at that point. So I don't know what I expected. I guess I kind of expected that he would have a ruling that day, because as it's been said to me numerous times, it was just going through a traffic sign, which I don't understand, because a police interaction is a police interaction. But he was going to research it. He told me he would send it to me in writing. He didn't know how long it could be. He was going to try to do it within the next 48 to 72 hours. I want to say that was like on a Thursday, so to add insult to injury, I think I had to go through the whole weekend, and I am pretty sure it arrived on a Monday, and I can remember I was like really afraid to open it. I mean, I had a lot invested in this. I had emotion invested into it. I had time. I had money invested into it. So I was pretty nervous, and so finally I was like, okay, I'm gonna rip it open. And there it was, right at the top. It said not guilty. So yeah, and something that I wanted to use as an analogy is I was at a restaurant yesterday, just kind of a sandwich shop, nothing fancy, and a DoorDasher came in, and it was busy. It was a Friday night, and they were there to pick up their order. And it was kind of like both DoorDasher and people do a lot of pickups. So there was kind of an area where people were milling about waiting, and the DoorDasher was kind of aggressive and was like, hey, is my order ready? And they wouldn't give a definitive time. They just kept, stringing them along, saying it's coming, it's coming. And finally, I was waiting too. 15 minutes into it, they're getting more aggressive, and the one woman was not having it. And so the people who were there waiting and weren't aggressive were offered cheesecake, a drink, and the DoorDasher who was aggressive was not offered anything. So I thought that was a really good analogy about the gov. If you just kind of don't say anything, everything's great. But as soon as you want to assert yourself and challenge and say things to the government, oh, that's when the Jericho wall comes tumbling down. They don't like that. So yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting lesson. But once again, that is my story of getting a moving violation, pleading not guilty, going to a magistrate, being found guilty, appealing it to the county courthouse, going in front of that judge, presenting my side of the story, and having a not guilty verdict rendered. And once again, if anyone has questions or you want to go through this process, it really teaches you a lot. It's very fulfilling, but it is stressful as well. You're like, you're going into an arena that you're not familiar with, and it can be intimidating, but it helps you grow in your confidence aspect. I mean, I was just like, I was on top of the world when I got that letter in the mail. So anyway, please subscribe to my channel, like it, comment, communicate with me. I'm more than happy to help anyone who wants to plead not guilty. Thank you.